let's move on. I know that the screen wants us to talk to Javier, apparently. So let's do that. Let's listen to a Wirecast.
I figured out what was wrong, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
I had an early version of the show loaded up on the deck.
Well, that would make sense.
Now it's fine.
Good. Okay.
Hopefully.
We fixed it, we think. Javier, welcome. You want to talk about religious charities and holding services hostage, for lack of a better term, to those who might, engage with your religion?
Hey, Javier.
Hello. First thing I'm going to have to say is I'm sorry. I got to apologize. It seems that my voice is infecting your technology, and it's making my name be displayed. I don't know how to make it stop doing that. I'm sorry.
Yes, this is all your fault. Yeah. Give us your best shot. What have you got for us today?
All right. So using the charities, that was more of an example of the greater point, because when I was trying to describe the point of the call screener, my linguistic skills failed me. It's kind of but to build off of that example in particular, as I've heard many people say, I don't know if any of you have ever stated this on any of the shows before, but it was the example of a charity, holding a sandwich hostage from a homeless person until they hear a sermon or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that, like I said, is just an example for the greater point. And the greater point is, I would like to know what you guys think about how a religious person, the exact religion isn't really relevant, but a religious person may engage in an action that to others, myself included, may seem unjustified or, I guess, suboptimal, because
Sure.
they think that their religious cause is of greater importance. For example, oh, sure, you can have this sandwich, but you got to listen to the sermon first, because the sermon's going to save your soul. The sandwich is just food, but the sermon is spiritual food.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a really good question. I actually did an episode with student Dr. Ben on ADHD. We read through an article that a Christian organization had put out about the kind of medications that are needed to treat ADHD and similar conditions, and what they thought about it as Christians. And it's very insidious, because what they end up doing is saying, we're not doctors. We will never, ever say, do this or don't do that medically, because we can't, because we're not doctors, right? Listen to your doctor, which sounds great until the next line is, but if you're worried about your soul and eternity, here's what you should be doing, and we can speak for God, right? And that's always going to supersede what your doctor says if you're a Christian. And so essentially what they're doing is making it seem like there's that distinction, but in actuality, they are trying to supersede it, exactly like what you said, Javier. And that can cause a lot of harm. Frankly, I don't care what you believe if you are somebody out there doing good things for other people. If you are helping your community, if you are standing up for those who are oppressed, we can have the conversation about what you believe and why, but that's not going to determine my perspective on you, right? It's going to be, how are you impacting those around you? Mm-hmm. The problem becomes, as you said, when a lot of religious organizations, not just Christian, but in this case, we'll talk about that, uses their ability to impact change as a way to get that second agenda in through the door, in a way that impacts how effective they are in the first place.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind is the idea of, maybe funding homeless shelters or funding, orphanages or something like that. But if you're only funding orphanages that require those children to regularly attend religious services and pray,
right,
then the impact of that is that it really appears that the charity is second to the proselytization. Can you help me? Proselytization.
I think you got it the first time.
I think so.
You're good. No, exactly. It's prioritizing a group that agrees with you, right? In the same way that a lot of religiously run and Catholic, specifically hospitals in the U.S., do a lot of good. They absolutely do. I'm not going to deny that. But when it becomes an issue where I'm going to invoke my religious privilege as somebody working in this Catholic hospital to deny you care because I disagree with a choice that you made, that then becomes an unsafe place and a place that only benefits a subgroup, which is, not fair or good, especially if, the group that's being benefited is also the one in power and holding all of the social capital.
Yeah.
But that's a lot. Javier, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I agree with most of what you said. I do think that, for example, I myself don't even touch a drop of alcohol, but I've heard that the 12-step program, for instance, has religious is a religious-based program. Like I believe realizing that you need a power greater than yourself to beat your addiction is one of the steps.
Mm-hmm.
And although, like I said, because I personally don't drink, I don't know the rates of effectiveness of this program. I would imagine that a program whose focus is first, foremost, and only to get people sober would be more effective than one whose purpose is to, get people sober and also make them Christians.
Well, so that's kind of an interesting one, because I don't know if that's really the order that it's in. I think that the effect or the impact that most people give it is sobriety, and an offshoot of that, what can come from that, is a religiosity, and not necessarily Christian religiosity, but just a religiosity period. But really, I would say that the danger there isn't that specifically. It's that you're essentially teaching people that they cannot help themselves.
Right.
That you are too weak to get through, becoming sober. And I think that when you teach people that they're helpless, or you convince people that they're just unable to do something like that, I feel like it's damaging in the long run. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of Christian groups that incorporate AA, and I'm sure that there are plenty of AA chapters that are, push people into churches, but I don't know if it uses
the idea of a higher power as a necessity to build off of. And so if you don't believe in a higher power, you are encouraged to do so, or else it won't work for you, or it just doesn't work as well. And it doesn't work well. The stats on it are actually horrible in terms of how many people are able to actually maintain their abstinence. But yeah, Javier, I think that's I'm just so curious, because the way that you talk about these things with us, we agree on most things. And the reason that we find it interesting to talk to you is because you are a theist. And for me, I'm super curious as to how your own beliefs kind of wrap into this. Like, as you're talking to us, are there things that are kind of making more sense, making less sense? Like, how are you interpreting these conversations? Because I know that we find them interesting, but also we're curious about
where are the differences.
Yeah.
Well, could you be a little more specific? Because I don't want to go on to something unnecessarily broad. Could you be more specific?
Sure. As you're coming up with these questions, are these things that are impacting your belief system, or are these things that you're just curious about?
I guess you could say I'm an animal driven by curiosity primarily.
Okay.
In terms of things that impact my belief system, like I stated before, I guess you could say I'm currently in a period of evaluating my belief system. I still plant my flag on theist ground in particular at the moment.
Sure.
But I guess I'm in a period of great, questioning and evaluation. And part of that is driven by I guess you could say, I've also said this before, my understanding of that I have to deal with the world as it is, and what I may believe about it, but cannot necessarily demonstrate is sort of secondary.
So are there still places where what you believe about it, but can't demonstrate, coming into conflict with the world that you find yourself in?
Well, yes, I would say, for example, I cannot demonstrate that there was any sort of I can't demonstrate that there was a need or a God to create the cosmos, for instance, even though that's something that I can believe. And not attributing this to actually, you know what? I will say the Christian God, because what's the point in saying I'm a Christian if I'm not willing to, say that? But
Fair.
And before all the apologists try to defend the God without saying it's the Christian God. But anyway,
thank you for the honesty. By the way, that is refreshing.
Yeah. But yeah, with that particular example, my thing is sufficiency is satisfied, but necessity is not. Clearly, if there was like a sufficiently powerful God, they could create the cosmos. But I don't see how that's necessarily necessary, because I can't exactly observe the creation of a cosmos if such a thing is even a rational concept. So
yeah, and
I guess that's.
And if you were to take several of those events, right? Let's say we hypothetically were looking at 5 different creation of cosmoses. We couldn't be like, this has the markings of creation by a divine entity, and this has the markings of a naturalistic instantiation of a universe. And because we just can't compare them, there's no way that anyone can look at it and go, oh yeah, no, definitely, it's got God's fingerprints all over it. Like it doesn't.
Unfortunately, as humans, we are kind of limited to comparison, right? That's how we decide on just about everything. Does this thing happen in the same way that the others do? Let's compare. And if we only have one universe, then we can't compare it to anything. So we're either going to have to come up with a new way of knowing things, which a lot of Christians advocate for, like Reformed epistemology, or we're going to have to say we don't know. But I do love the distinction between sufficient and necessary, Javier. I think, honestly, I would love to have a full conversation about that.
Oh, yeah. Ontology is just fantastic. That's something V and I have fun with. Javier, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just, for the sake of this argument, grant that we live in a universe that was created by some creator, right? Let's live in that for just a second. Imagine a scenario where a creator created the universe, and in doing so, expended themselves and have just poofed, right? They blew themselves up in creating the universe, versus a creator who didn't, and who listens to your prayers and, it is the Christian God. Like, which one would be more likely, do you think?
Which one would be more likely?
Yeah, the God that created the universe and then went out for a pack of smokes and never came home, or the Christian God?
My uncle.
Javier, I like you more and more.
Thanks. I don't really know how I could evaluate the likelihood of that. I'm sorry if that's an unsatisfactory answer.
No, I would honestly give the same answer. I'm very curious about why we're using likely here.
Oh, sure, because what I'm doing is I'm looking at how many layers of assumption we need to make. How many?
Occam's razor, not like likelihood as in statistical likelihood.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm basically what I'm saying is, I think that if you were to just look at that, you still have a really long way to go until you get to Christianity. And because of that, I think that even if you did convince me that, there was some creator, some intelligent designer to the universe, how can we tell that they didn't just blow up when it happened, And so when you say that you're a Christian, I think that if I were in your shoes, I would need to look at that and go, well, crap, it's much more likely, right? There are far fewer assumptions in the blowing yourself up version of a God compared to the omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, omnibenevolent deity.
Let's also see if let's take a poll. Who thinks that we're getting demonetized because of the number of times Eric has said blowing yourself up?
No, we're good. We're good.
Oh God, Javier. Here's the deal. I think that we agree on most stuff, which is awesome, and I would love to talk more about this kind of thing and really get into the big questions that you might still be thinking about, because I can guarantee you, even if you're thinking about questions that we haven't thought of, I want to know those myself. Like that's curiosity for me. And if we have thought about the things that you're thinking right now and have found answers that are sufficient, or haven't found answers, we want to be able to offer that too. So definitely call back, but call in about a belief that you're maybe still kind of looking under that microscope with. And I think that would be a really cool conversation to have.
I agree.
Alrighty then. I guess I'll think of a question for next week, and if I can, I'll call back in. Thanks for taking my call, and have a nice day.
You too, Javier. Thank you.
So, what that makes me think of? I'm not saying this is true of Javier, and I don't want to in any way trivialize it. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's this kind of testing the water. Do I need to make any huge changes? If I'm in a place where I don't believe like I used to, what does not believing look like? What about all of these other things that are kind of a part of it? There are a lot of people who stay in their religious systems even after they stop believing, because they have all these assumptions that, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You have to eat babies if you're going to be an atheist. And if you don't do that, then you're not an atheist. And so, how do you feel about these charities? How do you feel about these things? I feel like for a lot of people, and the reason that I find a lot of use in that last conversation is because there are people who are questioning, who are going, well, I'm not believing, but does that mean I need to make another commitment similar to the commitment I made when becoming a Christian if I'm going to say that I'm an atheist?
Yes, you need to come on this show and you need to say, Eric and V, I'm an atheist. And then you will be a true atheist.
No, oh God, no. But I find that is so, it's so nice to be able to actually have a platform for people to bounce that up against, so that they can go, oh crap, I don't need to, it's, I don't know. That's fun for me.
I can see the value in calling in as somebody who is questioning and asking the kinds of questions that Javier has been, which are, can I hold on to my moral system if I decide on these ontological questions, and maybe come to the conclusion that, the ones I had previously weren't accurate? Can I still be the good person that I might think that I am? And so the answer to that is yes.
And if that's not what's going on, we don't mean to trivialize it, but I think that those are the people who can get something out of this.
Yeah.
Specifically.